So tell me, sweetheart, what's your rank? Or are you just here to polish our rifles? The laughter came sharp, cruel, 6 officers flanking an admiral who thought he already knew exactly who she was. She didn't look up, just kept cleaning the rifle in her lap, hands steady, eyes calm as storm water. They called her nobody, a cleaning girl, a joke, until Lieutenant Bannister grabbed her arm to force her to her feet and her sleeve rode up, a tattoo, a number, 847. A name nobody was supposed to say out loud ever again. The Admiral's face went white. He'd said her eulogy 3 years ago. Because the woman they mocked wasn't nobody. She was the ghost who saved his life once already, and she'd just walked back onto his range to save it a second time from an enemy standing closer than he ever imagined. Fort Ashworth Outdoor Range, Nevada, 1,400 hours. Heat like a hand pressing down, flat and endless and merciless. Dust rises off the firing line in slow spirals, caught gold in the afternoon light. The smell of gun oil and scorched earth hangs thick in the air. Somewhere past the berms, a hawk circles once twice, then drifts away, uninterested in what's happening below. Admiral Marcus Thorne stands with his hands clasped behind his back, 61 years old. Silver hair cropped close, a face carved by 4 decades of command, every line earned. 6 officers flank him, crisp in their dress uniforms, laughing at something one of them said a moment ago. The sound doesn't fit the desert, too polished, too self-satisfied. 15 personnel work the range today. Rifles cracking in staggered rhythm down the line. Brass casings glinting where they fall. And near the equipment shed, in a strip of shade barely wide enough to matter, a woman sits cross-legged on the ground. 28 years old. Uniform standard issue. No insignia, no rank tabs, no name tape. Her hands move over a disassembled M110 sniper rifle with the kind of precision that doesn't come from a manual. Cloth in small circles. Bolt carrier group gleaming under her fingers. She doesn't look up when the laughter drifts closer. Doesn't look up when boots start crunching gravel in her direction. She just keeps cleaning. Thorne's shadow falls across her workspace first. Long. Deliberate. I asked you a question, he says, except he hasn't. Not yet, he's about to. So tell me, sweetheart, what's your rank? Or are you just here to polish our rifles? The words hang there, ugly and pleased with themselves. She doesn't answer. The cloth keeps moving. Lieutenant Colt Bannister steps up beside the Admiral. 32, lean, tanned. The kind of confidence that's never once been tested. He crosses his arms, and his mouth curls into something that wants to be a smile but doesn't quite have the warmth for it. Maybe she doesn't speak English, sir, Bannister says. Probably facilities. They let anyone clean up around here these days. Laughter. Easy. Cruel in that casual way that doesn't think of itself as cruel. A junior officer near the back nudges his friend. $10 says she can't even load it right. 20 says she's never fired anything bigger than a 9mm. Behind the firing line, near the range control tower, an older man turns his head. Owen Priest. 62 years old. Spine straight despite the years. Face like weathered stone. Cracked in all the right places from sun and time, and a career spent watching people shoot. He's run this range 15 years. Seen every kind of shooter the military makes. But something about the way this woman holds the rifle components. The angle of her wrists. The rhythm of her breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts held, 4 counts out. His jaw tightens. He's seen that pattern before. Exactly twice in his career. And both times were in places he still isn't allowed to talk about. Thorne leans down now, voice dropping into that register senior officers use when they want to sound patient, when really they're just barely holding on to annoyed. Look at me when I'm talking to you, petty officer. Or seaman, or whatever you are. The woman's hands still. Just for a heartbeat. Then she sets the bolt carrier down, places the cloth beside it. Same careful precision as everything else. Her fingers don't shake, not once. When she finally lifts her head, her eyes are calm, gray-green, like storm water before it breaks. They meet Thorne's stare without flinching, without anger, without giving him anything at all. No rank to report, sir. Her voice is quiet, level. The kind that doesn't rise to bait because it's decided bait isn't worth the breath. Just here to shoot. Bannister snorts. Just here to shoot. You hear that, Admiral? She's just here to shoot. He turns to the others, grinning wide now, playing to the room. Hope she's got someone to hold her hand on the trigger. Recoil on these things can get rough if you don't know what you're doing. Maybe we should spot for her, another officer offers. Make sure she doesn't hurt herself. Or embarrass the Navy, someone adds. Either way. Priest shifts his weight. His hand drifts toward the radio at his belt. Doesn't key it. Not yet, but his eyes are locked on her now. On the breathing. Box breathing. The kind they only teach in very specific pipelines. The kind most people in this Navy have never even heard of. He watches her grip on the bolt carrier again. Index and middle finger positioned exactly where they'd need to be for speed reassembly. In the dark, under fire, if it ever came to that, he swallows, hard, Thorn straightens, hands on hips. You're cleared to be on this range? Yes, sir. And you're planning to shoot? Today? Yes, sir. At what distance? For a moment, just a moment. Something flickers across her face. Not a smile. More like the shadow one leaves behind after it's already gone. 800 meters, sir. The laughter that follows is immediate, loud. Bannister actually slaps his own knee. 800, right, okay. He looks at Thorn. Sir, with respect, I'd like to see this, for educational purposes. Think we could all use a laugh after this morning's briefings. Thorn's expression doesn't change, but something glints behind his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or something harder underneath it. By all means, Lieutenant. He gestures toward the firing line. Let's see what our mystery shooter can do. The woman rises without using her hands, one smooth motion, cross-legged to standing like gravity forgot to slow her down. Her uniform hangs slightly faded, washed 100 times. No name tape, no unit patch. Nothing that says who she is beyond the fact that someone let her onto this range. She picks up the rifle, already reassembled. Checks the chamber in under a second. Walks toward lane 7. Priest is already moving. Boots carrying him closer before he's consciously decided to follow. Something crawling up his spine, recognition, or warning. Maybe both. She settles at the bench. Rifle on the sandbag rest. Posture textbook. Left hand under the forestock. Right hand on the grip. Body squared behind the weapon like she's done this 10,000 times because she has. One small adjustment to the rear bag. A fraction of an inch. Then stillness. Bannister leans against the tower railing. Somebody get her extra ammo. She's gonna need it just to get on paper at that range. Does she even know where the safety is? Someone calls out. Probably thinks the scope's a telescope. Thorn stands with his hands clasped behind his back again. Watching now. Really watching. All the amusement has drained out of his face, replaced by something quieter. Wariness. Or the beginning of a very different kind of attention. The woman doesn't react to any of it, she just breathes. 4, 4, 4. Her finger stays outside the trigger guard, range discipline. Perfect. She reaches up, adjusts the scope's parallax. A whisper of movement on the windage dial. Small corrections. The kind someone makes when they've done this thousands of times. In wind, in rain, in places that don't officially exist on any map. Priest is 10 feet away now. Close enough to see her grip. The angle of her cheekbone against the stock. His heart starts hammering. He's seen this posture exactly twice. Both times in places above his clearance level. Both times attached to consequences he still doesn't fully understand. Whenever you're ready, Thorn calls out, voice dripping false courtesy. We haven't got all day. Her breathing changes. 3 full cycles in. Hold, out, in. Hold out, in, hold out. On the 4th cycle, at the bottom of the exhale. When her lungs are emptiest and her body is at its stillest, her finger moves to the trigger. The first shot breaks clean. The rifle barks once. Recoil absorbed smooth into her shoulder. She doesn't flinch. Doesn't lift her head off the scope. Just works the bolt. Chambers the next round. Settles. Breathes. Second shot. Same rhythm. Bolt, chamber, settle, breathe, fire, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Total elapsed time from first shot to 5th, 18 seconds. Priest doesn't need to check the target monitor. He already knows. But he looks anyway. Pulls the spotting scope to his eye. Ranges downfield to the 800-meter mark. Standard silhouette target. Black on white. Concentric scoring rings. And in the exact center, where the highest value zone sits, 5 holes. Clustered so tight they almost overlap into one. He lowers the scope slowly. His hands are trembling, just slightly, but enough that he has to clench them to make it stop. Bannister has gone quiet. The other officers too, all eyes on the monitor mounted to the tower, showing the automated camera feed of the target. The scoring system displaying results in bright green numbers. 5 shots, 5 tens, 800 meters, 18 seconds. Thorne's jaw tightens. He steps closer to the screen like proximity alone might change what he's seeing. Check the equipment, he says quietly. Make sure the rangefinder's calibrated. It's calibrated every morning, sir, Priest replies. Voice rough. That's protocol. Check it again. A junior officer jogs out to the 800 line with a handheld laser rangefinder, takes 3 readings, radios back. Distance confirmed, sir. 800, plus or minus half a meter. Bannister stares at the woman now. She's sitting back from the rifle, hands loose in her lap, face still calm, like she just did something completely ordinary. He clears his throat. Lucky shots. Wind must have been favorable, or maybe the scope's just really high-end. What kind of glass you running? She doesn't answer, just looks at him with those stormwater eyes. I asked you a question, Bannister says. Sharper now. Standard issue, she says. Same as everyone else. No way someone shoots like that with standard gear. He looks at Thorne. Sir, I'd like to inspect her rifle. Make sure there's no unauthorized modifications, laser sights, stabilizers, anything that might give her an unfair edge. Thorne nods once. Do it. Bannister crosses to lane 7. Hand outstretched, the woman watches him come but doesn't move to stop him. He picks up the rifle. Turns it over. Checks the scope mounts, the trigger assembly, the barrel. His face grows tighter with every second he finds nothing. Nothing except a well-maintained, completely standard-issue M110 with a standard scope. No tricks, no modifications, just a rifle. He sets it down harder than he needs to. Fine, so you can shoot, doesn't mean anything. One good string doesn't make you a sniper. Could have been luck, wind, anything. Priest steps forward before he can stop himself. That wasn't luck, Lieutenant. His voice carries across the range. Several heads turn. Priest, stand down, Thorne says. Flat, Priest's mouth closes, but his eyes stay locked on the woman. She meets his gaze for a moment. Something passes between them, recognition or warning. Then she looks away. Thorne walks slowly to lane 7. Boot heels clicking on concrete. He stops beside the bench, arms crossed, studying her like a puzzle he needs to solve. Where did you train? Various locations, sir. That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm authorized to give. Bannister makes a disgusted sound. You're not authorized, you don't have clearance. You're just some nobody who got lucky with a rifle. He leans in. Probably had someone teach you this exact range, this exact setup, so you could show off. She doesn't respond. Just starts breaking down the rifle again. Hands moving through the disassembly sequence without needing to look. Thorne's eyes narrow. If you're really as good as that one string suggests, you'll have no problem demonstrating it again. Under more rigorous conditions, she pauses. Bolt carrier halfway out. What conditions, sir? Official qualification test. Tomorrow morning. 0800. Different range, different distance. Time limit. The works. He straightens. If you pass, you get certified. If you fail, you're off my range permanently. He leans down. And I'll make sure everyone knows you were a one-hit wonder. Sir, with respect, I'm not trying to impress anyone. Then you won't mind proving it. Bannister grins. This is going to be fun. I'll bring a camera for the records. The officers drift away, voices rising in speculation. Priest stays where he is, 20 feet back, watching. The woman finishes disassembling the rifle, lays each piece in its foam-lined case with care, closes the lid, stands, picks up the case. As she passes Priest, she slows, just for a second. Her eyes flick to his face, and in that brief moment he sees something that turns his blood cold. Not anger, not fear, something quieter, a tired patience. Like someone who's been waiting a very long time for something inevitable to arrive. Rangemaster, she says. Just those 2 words. Then she's walking away, boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Priest watches until she's out of sight, then pulls his radio and switches to a private channel he hasn't used in over a year. His hand is shaking again. Control, this is Priest. I need to flag something. Off record. The response crackles back. Go ahead. He hesitates, glances around to make sure no one's in earshot. That shooter who just cleared 800 meters in under 20 seconds. 5 perfect tens. He swallows. I think we need to look into her, quietly, because if she's who I think she is, we've got a situation on our hands. Copy that. Send her lane number and timestamp. We'll run it. He lowers the radio. Stares at the empty lane 7. The sandbags still hold the impression of the rifle. Brass casings glinting in the late afternoon sun. 5 perfect shots. 18 seconds. 800 meters. He's been doing this job 15 years. Seen Olympic-level shooters. Spec Ops veterans. Marine Scout snipers with 20 years behind the trigger. None of them, not one, has ever shot a group that tight, at that distance, under that kind of pressure. Not unless they came from somewhere very different. He thinks about the breathing. 4-4-4. He thinks about the grip, the posture, the way her eyes stayed flat and calm while 6 officers tore into her. The way she didn't rise to any of it. Didn't defend herself, didn't explain, just took it, like someone who's already been through worse. Much worse. He pockets one of the spent casings without really deciding to. Standard brass. Nothing special, nothing modified. Just a bullet that went exactly where it was supposed to go. He heads back toward the control tower, mind racing now, connecting dots he doesn't want connected. Dots forming a picture he really doesn't want to see. Because if she's who he thinks she is, then Admiral Thorne just made the worst mistake of his career. And tomorrow morning, when she shows up for that qualification test, things are going to get complicated. Fast, administrative building, 1,715 hours. Bannister sits in the small office he shares with 2 other junior officers. Laptop open. Coffee gone cold beside his elbow. He's been staring at the same screen for 10 minutes. Watching the range footage on repeat. The woman, the rifle, 5 shots, 18 seconds, every single one dead center. The timestamp in the corner reads 1,547, 22 to 1,547:40, 18 seconds. That doesn't make sense. He rewinds it. Watches her settle into position. Watches the rifle barely move with each shot. Watches her work the bolt like she's done it 10,000 times, which he realizes with a growing unease she probably has. Nobody shoots like that without serious trigger time. Serious training. The kind that doesn't show up in a standard enlistment record. The door opens. One of his roommates walks in, drops a gear bag on the floor with a heavy thud. Still watching that. Let it go, man. She got lucky. Bannister doesn't look away from the screen. 5 shots, 800 meters, 18 seconds, all 10s. That's not luck. The roommate shrugs, pulling off his boots, so she's good. Big deal. Plenty of good shooters in this Navy. Not that good. Not at that distance. Not that fast. Bannister finally tears his eyes from the laptop. I've been doing this 8 years. Qualified expert marksman 3 years running. My best time at 800 is 32 seconds for 5 shots. And I was proud of that. She did it in 18. And her group was tighter than mine's ever been. So she's better than you. Happens. Get over it. But he can't get over it. Because there's something else bothering him. Something he can't quite name. The way she moved. The way she breathed. The way she didn't react when Thorne and the others rode her. Like she'd heard worse. Like she'd survived worse. Like public humiliation was just background noise compared to wherever she'd been before. He closes the laptop, leans back. I'm going to check her gear tomorrow before the test. Make sure everything's regulation. Thorne already said I know what Thorne said, but I want to see it myself. Something's off. She's too good, too calm. It doesn't add up. His roommate gives him a long look. You know what your problem is? You can't stand that some random woman rolled up and outshot you in front of the Admiral. That's what this is. That's not. He stops himself. Maybe his roommate's right. Maybe he's just bitter. But it doesn't change the facts. Nobody shoots like that without a story, without a history. And whatever her history is, she's keeping it locked down tight. No name tape, no rank, no unit patch. Just a uniform and a rifle and skills that don't match the blank slate she's presenting. He stands, grabs his jacket. I'm going to run her through the system. See what comes up. You don't even have her name. I've got her face. I've got the timestamp. That's enough. He heads for the door. Pauses. And if I'm right, if she's hiding something, then tomorrow's test is going to get real interesting. His roommate just shakes his head, pulling out his phone. Whatever, man. Let me know when you find out. She's just talented with a chip on her shoulder. I'll laugh at you then. Bannister leaves without answering. The hallway is empty. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. He takes the stairs 2 at a time, down to the ground floor, where the admin offices sit. Personnel records, security clearances, service histories, everything digitized now. Cross-referenced across every branch. If she's legitimate, she'll be in there, and if she's not, well, that's a different problem entirely. He swipes his ID at the door to the personnel office. After hours, but his clearance gets him in. The room is dark except for a single monitor left on standby. He sits at the nearest terminal, logs in, pulls up the range access logs from today, scrolls until he finds lane 7, timestamp 1545 to 1600. The entry is there, but the name field is blank, just a notation. Walk on. Cleared by Range Master Priest. Bannister frowns. Walk-ons are supposed to show ID. That's protocol. How did she get on the range without a name in the system? He switches to the security camera feed, finds the angle covering the sign-in desk at the range entrance, rewinds to 1530. There, she's walking up to the desk, handing something to the clerk. The clerk looks at it, types something into the computer, waves her through. The whole interaction takes less than 30 seconds. He zooms in on her hand. She's holding some kind of card. Resolution isn't good enough to make out details. Could be a standard military ID. Could be something else. The clerk's screen is angled away from the camera. No way to see what was entered. Dead end. He sits back, frustrated. He's missing something. Some piece of information that would explain who she is and why she's here. He thinks about the way Priest reacted. The way the old man went quiet after her shots hit the board. The way he moved away from everyone before keying his radio, like he didn't want anyone overhearing. Priest knows something. Bannister's sure of it, and tomorrow, before that test starts, he's going to find out what. Range Master's office. 1745 hours. Priest sits at his desk, hands folded, staring at the phone. It rang 20 minutes ago. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes that changed everything. The voice on the other end had been calm, professional, the kind that doesn't waste words. Range Master Priest. This is Colonel Reyes Olden, G2 Intelligence. We've processed your inquiry. The individual in question is cleared to be on your range. Beyond that, I can't tell you anything else. Do you understand, sir? I need to know. You need to know she's cleared, that's all. Do not run her prints. Do not flag her access. Do not discuss this conversation with anyone outside secure channels. Are we clear, Range Master? He'd swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Clear. Good. And Priest. If she shoots tomorrow, let her shoot. Don't interfere. That's an order. The line went dead before he could respond. Now he sits in the quiet of his office, trying to process it. G2 Intelligence doesn't get involved in range operations. They don't call down to installations like Fort Ashworth. Unless something significant is happening. Something that crosses into the world of need to know and above his clearance level. He's been in the military long enough to recognize the signs, the careful non-answers, the orders disguised as suggestions, the implication that asking more questions would be career-limiting. She's not just some talented shooter. She's something else, something protected. Something that makes full-bird colonels call down from intelligence shops to tell range masters to stand down and shut up. Priest opens his desk drawer, pulls out the spent casing he pocketed earlier, turns it over in his fingers. Standard brass. But the way she shot it, the precision, the speed. That's not standard. That's something else entirely. He thinks about the tattoo he almost saw when she was reassembling the rifle. Her sleeve rode up just slightly, just enough for him to catch a glimpse of ink on her forearm. Dark lines, geometric. He didn't get a good look, but it was there. And if he's right about who she is, that tattoo is going to tell a very specific story. Tomorrow morning, when she shows up for the qualification test, things are going to get complicated. Because Admiral Thorne doesn't know what he's walking into, and Bannister, with his bruised ego and his need to prove something, is going to push hard. And when you push someone like her, someone with that kind of training, that kind of history, you don't get the reaction you expect. You get something much worse. Priest sets the casing down, picks up his phone, scrolls through his contacts, finds a name he hasn't called in 3 years. Master Sergeant Doyle, retired. Living about 40 minutes away. Doyle spent 20 years in places that don't appear on maps, doing things that don't appear in after-action reports. If anyone can confirm what Priest suspects, it's him. He hits dial. The phone rings twice before a gravelly voice answers. Priest, this is a surprise, Doyle. I need to ask you something. Off the records. Go ahead. If I describe a shooter to you, female, late 20s, no visible rank or unit identification, shoots 5 perfect 10s at 800 meters, under 20 seconds, what would you gee? Tell me. Another pause. Longer this time. When Doyle speaks again, his voice has changed. Gone flat. Careful. I'd tell you to stop asking questions and walk away. That's what I thought, Priest. Listen to me. If you've got someone like that on your range, you do your job and nothing else. You don't dig. You don't speculate. You definitely don't get in the way. Thorne's pushing her. Scheduled a qualification test tomorrow. Public. He's going to try to embarrass her. Doyle curses quietly. Then Thorne's an idiot, and you need to be ready for things to go sideways. How sideways? The kind of sideways that ends with people asking questions you can't answer. The kind that gets flagged all the way to the Pentagon if it goes wrong. Priest, I'm serious. If she's who I think she is, you're not dealing with some enlisted shooter looking to prove a point. You're dealing with someone who's been through the worst this world has to offer, and came out the other side. And if Thorne pushes too hard, Doyle stops himself. Just be ready. That's all I'm saying. The line goes dead. Priest sets the phone down slowly. His hands are shaking again. He looks at the casing one more time, then drops it back in the drawer and locks it. Tomorrow morning, 0800. Lane 3, qualification test. Different range, different conditions. All the pressure Thorne can bring to bear. And somewhere out there, the woman with no name and stormwater eyes is preparing. Not worried, not nervous, just preparing. Because whatever Thorne thinks is going to happen tomorrow, he's wrong. Priest stands, turns off the desk lamp, heads for the door. As he walks out into the cooling evening air, he says a quiet prayer. Not for the woman. She doesn't need it. For Thorne. Because tomorrow morning, the Admiral is going to learn a very hard lesson about assumptions. Temporary quarters. Building 12, 2,200 hours. The room is small. Cinder block walls painted institutional beige. Single bed, metal locker. Desk and chair bolted to the floor. Standard temporary billeting for transient personnel. No personal items visible except a single duffel bag on the floor beside the bed. The woman sits at the desk. Laptop open. Screen casting blue-white light across her face. She's not looking at the screen, she's looking at her hands. At the faint scar tissue on her knuckles, barely visible in the dim light. At the calluses on her fingertips from years of trigger time. At the thin white line across her left ring finger, where a piece of shrapnel once embedded itself deep enough to require field surgery. Each mark tells a story. Each scar is a chapter in a book most people will never read. Her sleeve is rolled up now. No reason to hide it when she's alone. The tattoo runs from mid-forearm to just below the elbow. A scope reticle, crosshairs, the number 847 in clean, precise digits. Below that, smaller text, Vantage, and dates 2018 to 2021. The ink is military grade, done by someone who knew what they were doing. Not decorative, documentary, a record, evidence. She traces the outline with one finger. Feels the slight raised texture where the ink sits under the skin. 847. Not all of them were bad people. Some were just unlucky. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong side of someone else's war. But they all had one thing in common. They were targets. Designated, confirmed, eliminated. She did her job, every single time. The laptop chimes softly. New email. She glances at the screen. No sender name. Just an encrypted address resolving to a string of characters. She opens it, enters the decryption key from memory. Reads, situation developing as expected. Thorne took the bait. Test scheduled for 0800. Bannister is digging. Priest knows more than he's saying. Proceed to phase 2. Reveal only when forced. Package delivery confirmed for 2,330 hours. Good luck, Captain. She closes the email, runs a 3-pass wipe on the message, shuts the laptop. Captain. It's been a long time since anyone called her that, to her face. 3 years, almost to the day. 3 years since the operation overseas that was supposed to end her, since the explosion that was supposed to kill her, since the months in that room, restrained to a chair, answering the same questions over and over, while men with blank faces did things she still dreams about when sleep won't come. They thought they broke her. They were wrong. You can't break someone who's already decided they're dead. You can hurt them. You can make them scream. But you can't take away the core of who they are if they've already let go of everything else. She survived by being empty, by being nothing, by waiting. And then, when they finally got careless, when they left her alone for just long enough, because they thought she was too damaged to move, she walked out, alone, through hostile territory in the dark, bleeding from a dozen places, made it to a checkpoint manned by Allied soldiers who almost didn't believe what they were seeing. The team that extracted her didn't ask questions, just loaded her onto the helicopter, wrapped her in a shock blanket, flew her out. The debrief came later, the medical treatment, the psychological evaluations, the decision made somewhere far above her pay grade, that Captain Sloane Kestrel was too compromised to return to active duty, that her identity was burned, that for everyone's safety, including hers, she needed to disappear, so they disappeared her. New name, new records, new life. She became a ghost in truth, not just in call sign. And for 3 years, she lived quietly, worked odd jobs, stayed off the grid, tried to figure out who she was when she wasn't Vantage anymore. But then the intelligence came through. The same network that killed her father, the same people who tortured her. They were still operating, still embedded, still selling information, sabotaging operations, getting good people killed for profit, and one of their next targets was Admiral Marcus Thorne. Not because he was dirty, because he was about to testify before a closed congressional review about defense procurement fraud and intelligence leaks. Because he knew too much. Because 15 years ago, he and her father had been partners in an investigation that almost exposed the whole network. An investigation that ended when her father died in a car explosion outside his home in Virginia. Sloane was young when it happened, young enough that the memory has softened at the edges the way all early grief does, sharp only in flashes. The news footage, the wreckage, her mother's face at the funeral, the investigation quietly shelved as mechanical failure, despite all the evidence pointing the other way. She learned early that the system doesn't always protect you. Sometimes it protects the people hurting you, and sometimes, if you want justice, you have to become something the system can't ignore. So she joined the military as soon as she was old enough. Enlisted, worked her way through the ranks, proved herself over and over until they noticed, until the calls came from people who don't officially exist, asking her to go where the real war happens, away from cameras and oversight, and every confirmed target she eliminated, she checked against a list. The list of names connected to her father's death, 23 of them scattered across her 847. 23 people who thought they were safe, who thought they'd gotten away with it. They were wrong, but the network is bigger than 23 people. It's bigger than she realized. And now it's coming for Thorne, which means it's time to stop hiding. Time to use the one thing they don't know, that she's still alive. That Vantage didn't die overseas, that she's here, watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. And tomorrow morning, when Thorne tries to humiliate her in front of witnesses, when Bannister tries to catch her in some imagined fraud, when they push and prod and try to make her break, that's when they'll see. That's when the tattoo comes out. That's when the truth stops being hideable. Not because she wants recognition. Recognition is dangerous. But because Thorne needs to know he's a target. Because Bannister needs to understand He's being used whether he realizes it yet or not. Because the only way to stop what's coming is to flip the board and force everyone to see what's really happening. A knock at the door. 3 raps, pause, 2 more, the delivery. Sloane stands, Crawhud opens it a crack. A man in civilian clothes, mid-30s. Blank expression. He hands her a small case, nods once and walks away without a word. She closes the door, sets the case on the desk, opens it. Inside, a phone, pre-programmed, encrypted, untraceable, and a single photograph. Admiral Thorne, leaving the base housing area. Timestamp from 2 hours ago. In the background, barely visible. A sedan with tinted windows. Same sedan that was parked outside her father's house the night before he died. Different plates, maybe. Different year. But the same model, the same configuration. The network's signature. They like consistency. She sets the photo aside, picks up the phone, already powered on, showing 1 contact. Relay 4. She doesn't call, not yet. First comes tomorrow. First comes the reveal. First comes the moment when Thorne realizes what he's dealing with. Then the call. Then phase 3. Sloane rolls her sleeve back down, covering the tattoo. Lies on the bed, hands behind her head, staring at the ceiling. Sleep won't come easy tonight. It never does before an operation. But that's fine. She's used to operating on no sleep. Used to functioning through pain, through fear, through everything the human body is supposed to shut down from. Years of training taught that out of her a long time ago. Tomorrow morning, 0800. Thorne and Bannister are going to try to break her. They're going to fail. And in the process of failing, they're going to set off a chain reaction they don't understand. A chain reaction that ends with the network exposed. The guilty punished. Justice. Real justice. Not the sanitized version. Finally delivered. 847 confirmed kills. 23 of them for her father. The rest for her country. For her unit. For the mission. Tomorrow's not about adding to that count. Tomorrow's about making sure the next name never gets added at all. She closes her eyes. Breathes. 444. The rhythm that's kept her alive through firefights and interrogations, and 3 years of hiding. The rhythm that will carry her through tomorrow. And whatever comes after, because she's not just a shooter, not just a soldier. She's a promise made in blood and kept in silence. A promise that the guilty will answer, that the dead will be remembered, that the system, for all its flaws, can still be forced to do the right thing, if you're willing to pay the price. And Sloane Kestrel has been paying that price for a long time. Tomorrow morning the mission continues. The next morning arrives cool and pale, the kind of desert dawn that pretends, for a few minutes, that the day won't turn brutal. The qualification range sits isolated on the far side of Fort Ashworth. Designed for formal testing under observation. Concrete firing positions. Standardized target arrays. Camera systems covering every angle. Nothing left to chance. Admiral Thorne arrives early with 4 officers, including Bannister. They set up observation positions with clear sight lines to Lane 3. Bannister carries a thick clipboard. Range regulations. Equipment specifications. Scoring criteria. He's been preparing since well before sunrise, making sure every detail gets documented. Making certain that when she fails, it's recorded from every angle. Range Master Priest stands near the control booth, face unreadable. He hasn't slept, spent the night reviewing protocols, running scenarios, trying to prepare for what's coming. Colonel Reyes Alden's orders were clear. Don't interfere, but Priest knows when something is about to go wrong. And every instinct he has, 15 years of instinct, is screaming that this morning is going to be one of those times. By 758, a crowd gathers. Word spread overnight. The mystery shooter who embarrassed the Admiral. People want to see her fail, want confirmation that yesterday was luck, that the world where skill matches rank still holds. Bannister checks his watch. 2 minutes. Think she'll show? Thorne doesn't answer, staring at the entrance. Something about yesterday keeps nagging him. The breathing pattern, the absolute lack of reaction to pressure. He's seen that before. In very specific people. In places where call signs replace names and missions stay classified for decades. At exactly 800, she walks through the gate. Same uniform, no insignia, rifle case in one hand. She moves through the crowd like they're invisible, eyes fixed on lane 3. No hesitation, just steady forward motion. Bannister steps into her path. I need to inspect your equipment before you shoot. She stops, looks at him, doesn't speak. Regulations. Any shooter using personal weapons must submit to pre-qualification inspection. Open the case. She sets it down, flips the latches. Bannister kneels, examining components. Stock, receiver, barrel, scope. He checks serial numbers, examines mounts, measures trigger pull. Everything passes. His frustration mounts with each regulation-compliant item. Finally, he closes the case. Fine, you're cleared. He stands. But understand this, you're shooting at 1,000 meters today, not 800. Different wind, different elevation, different everything. 3 attempts, 5 shots each. Minimum score 45 out of 50 to pass. And this time, we've got cameras on every angle. She picks up the case, walks to lane 3, sets up without a word. The crowd presses closer. Someone jokes about needing binoculars just to watch her miss. The atmosphere turns almost carnival-like. The range safety officer calls procedures. Shooter, you have 10 minutes to prepare. 3 attempts, 5 shots per attempt. Minimum score 45 to qualify. Range is hot. You may begin when ready. Sloan settles into position, checks the scope, makes adjustments, methodical, unhurried. The rifle settles onto the rest. Breathing begins. 4, 4, 4. Bannister leans toward Thorne. Watch. First shot will be off. Classic amateur mistake at this distance. The first shot breaks clean. Downrange 1,000 meters away, the target camera displays the impact. Center ring, 10 points. Bannister blinks. Lucky, wind assisted. Watch the next one. Second shot, same mechanical rhythm. Target camera shows another center hit. 10 points. The crowd quiets. Jokes stop. People lean forward. Third shot, fourth, fifth. Each lands center ring. Perfect group. 50 out of 50. First attempt. Bannister stares at the monitor. His face goes pale. Check the rangefinder. Something's wrong. Priest keys the radio. All systems confirmed accurate. Range is 1,000 meters, plus or minus 0.3. Calibration verified this morning per protocol. Thorne steps forward, eyes locked on the display. 5 holes forming a cluster smaller than his fist. At 1,000 meters. With variable wind, his mind races, connecting dots. The breathing, the posture, the precision. This isn't just skill. The safety officer calls out. Attempt 2. Bannister holds up a hand. Wait. Change conditions. Move her to lane 5. Priest's voice crackles sharp. Lieutenant, that's not protocol. I'm invoking safety officer discretion. Lane 3 has wind shadow. Lane 5 is fully exposed. If she's as good as she claims, it won't matter. Thorne nods slowly. Do it. Sloan stands without comment. Walks to lane 5. Sets up again. Same preparation. Same checklist. The crowd follows, murmuring. This is irregular. This is pressure. She doesn't react. Just sets up, settles, breathes. 4, 4, 4. Lane 5 sits fully exposed. Flags downrange snap harder now, showing gusts to 10 miles an hour. The angle is different, requiring adjustments. Bannister counts on this. Something to finally break whatever lucky streak she's on. 5 shots, same rhythm, same precision. 5 more center hits, another perfect 50. 100 out of 100 total. The crowd falls silent. No jokes, just stunned attention. People pull out phones, recording. This is becoming a story people will tell. Bannister drops his clipboard. Third attempt, I want no. Thorne says quietly. No more attempts. She's qualified. More than qualified. He steps closer. Who trained you? Sloan doesn't look up. Various instructors, sir. That's not an answer. It's the one you're cleared to receive, sir. Thorne's jaw tightens. I want your identification, your full service record. Right now, she finally looks at him. Stormwater eyes flat and calm. I don't think you do, sir. Not here, not in front of everyone. That wasn't a request. Bannister moves closer. Show us your ID. Show us your orders. Show us anything. Proving you're supposed to be here. Because I'm starting to think you're running some kind of scam. He reaches for her arm, intending to pull her to her feet. Force compliance. His fingers close around her left forearm, gripping tight. When he pulls, her sleeve rides up. The tattoo becomes visible, clear, undeniable. Scope reticle, crosshairs. The number 847. Text. Vantage dates. 2018, 2021. Bannister freezes, hand still on her arm but stopped moving, just staring. His mouth opens. Nothing comes out. The crowd erupts in whispers. Those close enough point. Someone gasps. Priest has gone white, gripping the console. He knew, suspected. But seeing confirmation is different. He keys the radio. All personnel, stand down. I repeat. Stand down. Thorne stares at the tattoo. His face cycles through confusion, disbelief, recognition, something close to horror. His lips form a word that doesn't come out. Then louder, 847. She pulls her arm away. Bannister lets go like he's been burned. She rolls the sleeve back down. But the damage is done. Everyone saw it. Vantage. Thorne's voice comes out barely above a whisper, then louder as memory crashes into him all at once. Your ghost. The silence is absolute. 50 people frozen in the desert heat. The call sign hanging in the air like it weighs something. The number. The dates ending 3 years ago. The woman reported dead, standing in front of them, breathing, alive, undeniable. An older man pushes through the crowd. Master Sergeant Doyle. Retired. Who drove out from wherever he's living now the moment Priest called him last night. He stops 10 feet away, looks at the tattoo, still partially visible, and his whole face transforms. Recognition. Respect. Something close to awe. Vantage. That operation 5 years ago, you pulled Thorne's team out of that valley, every one of them. He shakes his head slowly. They said you died overseas. The crowd goes even quieter if that's possible. Every phone still recording. Sloan stands slowly, faces Thorne. I'm Captain Sloan Kestrel. Sniper Operations 2018 through 2021. She pauses, and you, Admiral Thorne, are in immediate danger. Thorne takes a step back. What are you talking about? The same network that killed my father 15 years ago is targeting you. They know you're scheduled to testify. They know what evidence you're holding. They're planning to eliminate you before you get the chance to speak. Bannister finds his voice, shaky. That's insane. Sloan turns to him. Voice quiet, devastatingly certain. Lieutenant Bannister, how long has your family been receiving threats? He goes rigid. How do I know? Because the same people threatening them are the same people who sent me overseas to die. They've been using you, pressuring you, to sabotage anyone getting close to the Admiral. Bannister's face is collapsing now, layer by layer. Whatever confidence he walked in with this morning stripped away in real time in front of 50 witnesses and a dozen phone cameras. The morning sun climbs higher over the desert, and somewhere behind that light, a whole day's worth of consequence is only just beginning. The crowd doesn't disperse. Nobody moves. 50 people standing in the widening heat of a desert morning, and not one of them can look away. Because some mornings split time in half, before and after, and everyone on this range just watched the line get drawn. Admiral Thorne stands very still, older, suddenly, than he did 5 minutes ago. Something in his shoulders has changed, like the weight he's carried without noticing for years just got heavier and lighter all at once. Recognition does that. Cracks a person open in places they thought were sealed. Bannister hasn't moved either, hand still hovering where her arm used to be. Fingers curled around nothing, because he grabbed a ghost, and ghosts don't come back for nothing. Sloan rolls her sleeve down the rest of the way. Slow, deliberate. Like she's closing a door she opened by accident, except she didn't open it by accident at all. She let it happen. Let Bannister do it for her. Let 50 witnesses see what words alone would never have convinced them of. That's how you tell the truth to people who don't want to believe it, she thinks. You don't argue. You show them the receipt. Doyle steps closer. Old boots on concrete, slow and certain. The walk of a man who spent 2 decades not hurrying because hurrying gets people killed. Captain, he says. Just that. Like the word itself is a salute. She nods once. Doesn't smile. There's nothing in this moment that deserves a smile yet. Thorne finally finds his voice, and it comes out smaller than he probably intended. 5 years, he says. 5 years, I thought. He stops. Starts again. I gave a statement for your memorial. I stood in a room and I said things about you. Past tense. I know, sir. You knew, and you let me. I didn't have a choice, sir. Neither did you back then. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. Bannister's voice cracks through, sharp and defensive. The last gasp of a man trying to hold onto solid ground that's already gone. This is insane. This is nobody comes back from dead. Nobody gets to just walk onto a range and Lieutenant. Thorne's voice. Low. A single word, and it lands like a hand on the chest, stopping Bannister mid-sentence. Bannister swallows whatever else he was going to say. Sloane turns to him, and there's something in her face now that wasn't there a moment ago. Not softness, exactly, but something adjacent to it. The look of someone circling toward a wound they already know is there. How long, she asks. How long what? How long have they had your family? The words hit him like a physical thing. His whole face goes through several stages of collapse in under 2 seconds. Denial, fear, and then, underneath it, something like relief, because someone finally said it out loud, and he didn't have to be the one to say it first. How could you possibly 6 weeks, she says. Give or take. It started small, a photograph. Maybe a note. Something that felt like nothing at first. Something you told yourself was a coincidence. Bannister's jaw works. No sound comes out. Then it got specific, she continues. Where your wife works. What time your kids leave the house. Small details that only make sense if someone's been watching. Long enough to know your patterns better than you do. He's breathing hard now. Chest rising and falling too fast for a man just standing still. How? He finally manages. How do you know that? Because it's the same playbook, she says. The exact same one, used on people before you. People who didn't survive it the way you're about to. The crowd has gone dead silent. Not the silence of people bored, or people waiting for the interesting part to start. The silence of people realizing they walked in expecting a joke. And instead, they're standing at the edge of something much larger, much darker. Something none of them are equipped for. Priest keys his radio again, voice low. All personnel not directly involved, clear the range now. Nobody argues. Boots start shuffling. Bodies drift back toward the gate in 2s and 3s. Phone still raised, still recording, because some instinct in every human being says record this, whatever this is, because you will never see anything like it again. Within 90 seconds, it's just 5 people standing in the widening light. Thorne, Bannister, Sloane, Priest, Doyle, and whatever is about to happen next. Sloane steps closer to Bannister, close enough that he has to look at her instead of past her. I need you to tell me everything, she says. Every message, every instruction, every threat, right now. Because every minute we spend talking about whether this is real is a minute your family doesn't have. Bannister's hands are shaking. If I talk, they said. If I talk, they're not watching you right now, Lieutenant. Not this second. You think they have eyes on a military range with 50 witnesses and a range master keying an intelligence channel? No. This is the one window you have. And it's closing. He looks at Thorne. Some last plea for permission, or absolution, or just for someone else to make the decision for him. Thorne's voice is quiet, not unkind. Tell her, son. And something in Bannister breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a slow structural failure, the kind that happens after weeks of holding weight nobody should carry alone. 6 weeks ago, he starts. A message. Anonymous number. A photo of Sarah, my wife, leaving the grocery store. Nothing threatening in the words. Just a photo. And underneath it, we're watching your family. Do exactly as instructed, and nothing happens to them. His voice catches. I thought it was a scam. I almost laughed. Until the next one came with our home address, the layout of our house. Sarah's work schedule down to the minute. He looks down at his hands. Then it was instructions. Small things at first. Watch Kane during range hours. Report anything unusual. Then bigger. Interfere if anyone shows unusual interest in him. Make sure nobody gets close enough to matter. He looks up at Sloane. Yesterday. When you showed up, they told me. Make sure she fails. Publicly, whatever it takes. The silence after that confession is different from the one before it, heavier. Full of everything nobody's said yet. Sloane's voice stays level. But something underneath it has gone very cold. Where's the last contact from? I don't know. Untraceable number. Always different. Photos. Do you still have them? He nods, pulls out his phone with hands that won't quite stop trembling, and hands it over. She scrolls, fast, efficient, eyes narrowing at something on the screen that the others can't see. Because there it is, the same signature, the same careful, patient cruelty she's seen before, years ago, in a different set of photographs, in a different life, when the target had been her father, instead of a scared lieutenant's family. She holds up the phone toward Priest. This vehicle, do you recognize it? Priest leans in. A dark sedan, tinted windows, parked at the edge of a grocery store lot, barely visible in the corner of one photo. I've seen that car on base, he says slowly. More than once. Never thought twice about it. Whose? I don't know. It's not logged under a personal registration I recognize. Could be a contractor vehicle. We get a lot of those through here. Sloane's jaw tightens. Contractor. Defense contractor, Priest clarifies. Civilian outfit. Does maintenance work on some of the range equipment. Comes and goes with base access clearance. Nobody really questions because they've been cleared for years. Something shifts behind Sloane's eyes. A door opening somewhere in her memory, connecting a thread she didn't know was loose until just now. What's the company called? Meridian Defense Solutions, Priest says. Why? Because that name means nothing to any of them standing there. But it means everything to her, because 15 years ago, in a file she was never supposed to see, in a report that got buried under a mechanical failure ruling, nobody bothered to question. There had been a single line item, a subcontractor payment. A shell company that dissolved 18 months after her father's death and never appeared in any official record again. The name had been different, slightly. The way these things always are, different letters, same bones. She hands the phone back to Bannister, but her mind is already somewhere else, already running the math backward, connecting a 15-year-old ghost to a car in a grocery store parking lot. Sir, she says, turning to Thorne, who signed off on Meridian's contract renewal this year. Thorne blinks, caught off guard by the shift. I'd have to check. Why does that matter right now? Because somebody on this base has been feeding them access for years. Somebody trusted enough that nobody questions a sedan parked where it shouldn't be. Somebody with enough authority to keep a contract renewed that probably should have been flagged a decade ago. Doyle's voice, low and grim, cuts through the moment. You're saying there's someone inside. There's always someone inside, Sloane says. That's how networks like this survive. Not through force. Through patience. Through finding the one person in a position of trust who's either compromised, or greedy, or scared enough to look the other way. She turns back to Bannister. How much time do we have before the next contact? He checks his watch, hands still shaking. They usually reach out around noon. To confirm I followed instructions. What happens if you don't respond? His face goes gray. I don't know, I've never not responded. Sloane looks at the sky, calculating light, calculating hours, calculating the particular kind of math that only makes sense to someone who's spent years planning missions, where the margin for error rounds down to zero. Then we have until noon, she says. After that, they'll know something's wrong. And when people like this know something's wrong, they move fast, which means whoever's holding your family isn't going to wait around to see how this plays out. Bannister's voice comes out barely above a whisper. What do? We move faster than they expect, she says. We use the one thing they don't have. What's that? Me, she says. As far as they know, I don't exist. Vantage died overseas 3 years ago. They've built their entire plan around a woman who doesn't factor into it. That's the only advantage we have left, and we're not wasting it standing here talking. They move to the range control building. Windowless, concrete walls. The kind of room designed to keep information in, not out. Priest pulls up base security footage on the main terminal, hands still not entirely steady. Sloane stands behind him, arms crossed, eyes scanning 3 months back through time-stamped entry logs. Because patterns don't lie. People do. Systems don't. And somewhere in 3 months of footage, there's a pattern waiting to be found. Pull every entry for that sedan, she says. Every gate, every timestamp. Priest's fingers move across the keyboard. Got 12 instances over 90 days. Same vehicle. Different gate codes each time. Which means whoever's driving it has access to multiple credential sets. Sloane says. That's not contractor-level clearance. That's someone with administrative reach. Doyle leans over Priest's shoulder, squinting at the screen. Cross-reference the gate codes against personnel who'd have authorizations to issue them. Priest runs the query. The screen populates. A short list. 6 names. Sloane's eyes move down the list, fast, methodical, until they stop, because one name sits there that doesn't belong. Not because it's unfamiliar, because it's the opposite. A name everyone on this base trusts without question. A name that's been synonymous with integrity for longer than most of the personnel here have been in uniform. Colonel Irene Castellan, Deputy Commander. Second in authority only to Thorne himself. 28 years of unblemished service. The kind of officer junior personnel are told to model themselves after. Sloane stares at the name for a long moment, because that's the thing about networks like this. They never put the target where you'd expect to find it. They put it exactly where nobody thinks to look. Priest, she says quietly, pull Colonel Castellan's authorization history. Everything. Contract approvals, gate code issuances, travel logs, everything from the last 2 years. Thorne, who's been standing near the door, silent through most of this, finally speaks. Irene, he says, you think no? That's not possible. I've known her 20 years. She was there when he stops himself. She was there, he says again, quieter. When David died, my friend. Your father, she sat with me at the funeral. Sloane's face doesn't change, but something inside her goes very still. She was there, she repeats. Yes, close to the investigation, before it got shut down. Thorne's face shifts, the color draining slowly, like watching a man realize the floor he's standing on was never as solid as he thought. She was the one who told me to let it go, he says, almost to himself. 15 years ago. She said pushing it further would only get more people killed. She said sometimes the right thing to do is know when to stop. Sloane's voice comes out very quiet, very controlled. The kind of control that takes everything a person has. She told you to stop. Yes, and you did. I did. The silence that follows is not empty. It's full of 15 years of grief that just found a name it didn't know it had. Because Sloane has spent a decade and a half hunting ghosts, chasing shell companies, and buried reports and dead ends that led nowhere. And the entire time, the person who told her father's oldest friend to stop looking was standing close enough to hand him coffee at the funeral. She turns back to the screen, forces her breathing steady. 4 counts in. Because falling apart right now is a luxury she doesn't have. Because Bannister's family is somewhere on a clock that's already running. Because feelings, even 15 years of them, even this particular one, have to wait. Pull everything, she says again. I want a full picture before noon. Priest works fast, pages of records scrolling past. Contract renewals signed by Castellan's office. Gate access grants issued under her authority. A pattern emerging slowly, the way water finds cracks in concrete, patient, inevitable, and then something else. A financial record buried 3 layers deep in a maintenance contract audit. A payment routed through Meridian Defense Solutions to a private account. An account that traces, eventually, after 4 more clicks, to a name. I. Castellan. Nobody in the room says anything for a long moment. Because there it is. Not speculation anymore. Not a hunch built on 15-year-old grief and a coincidence of gate codes. Proof. Doyle exhales slowly. 28 years of service, he mutters. And this is what it comes down to. Thorne's face has gone somewhere Sloane hasn't seen before. Past shock, past anger, somewhere colder and more exhausted. The look of a man realizing the person he trusted most, for the longest, was never who he thought. I need to sit down, he says quietly, and does. Sloane doesn't have time for that particular grief right now, but she recognizes it, files it away, understands it will need attention later, when there's time for it. Right now there's a clock running toward noon, and a family somewhere on the wrong side of it. Priest, she says. Where's Castellan right now? He checks another feed. Building 4. Deputy Commander's office. She's been in a meeting since 730. Good, Sloane says. That means she's not the one holding the phone that's supposed to call Bannister at noon. Somebody else is executing the actual contact. Bannister, who's been sitting silent in the corner, finally speaks, voice hollow. So what do we do? Just wait for her to call and hope you can trace it? No, Sloane says. We don't wait for anything. Waiting is how people die in situations like this. She turns to Priest. I need everything Meridian has logged on base. Vehicle registrations, delivery schedules, any property they have listed within a 50-mile radius. Priest pulls it up. A short list of registered addresses, most of them corporate offices, easily dismissed. Except one, a warehouse, industrial district, south side of the base perimeter, logged as equipment storage, last inspected over a year ago. Sloane's eyes lock onto it. There, she says, you don't know that for certain. Doyle says, careful, the voice of a man who's learned the cost of moving on assumption. I don't need certain, Sloane says. I need probable, and probable is all we have time for. Every network like this operates the same way. They don't improvise locations under time pressure. They use what's already secured, what's already off the radar. A warehouse nobody's inspected in over a year is exactly the kind of place people disappear into. She looks at Bannister. You said noon, that gives us just under 3 hours. 3 hours to confirm a location, mount a rescue, and extract 2 hostages without triggering whatever fail-safe Castellan's network has built into this operation. Doyle says, doing the math out loud, like it might change the answer. That's not a lot of runway, Captain. It's the runway we've got, Sloane says. 20 minutes later, they've moved to a private conference room off the main administrative building. The curtains drawn, door locked. Just the 5 of them, plus one more. Because Sloane made a call, a short one, to a number that connects to people who don't exist on paper, the same way she technically doesn't. The response had been immediate. A team already in the region, already briefed on the broader operation targeting Thorn, repositioned within the hour. 3 operators arrive quietly through a side entrance. No uniforms, no names offered, the kind of professionals who move through a room like they're barely disturbing the air. Sloane briefs them fast, efficient, years of practice, compressing complex information into clean, actionable pieces. 2 hostages, civilian, non-combatants, location probable but unconfirmed, time window under 3 hours. One of the operators, a woman with steel-gray eyes and a scar along her jaw, studies the warehouse schematic pulled from public property records. Entry points, she asks. 2 visible, front roll door, side personnel door. Could be more we don't know about. Guards unknown. Assume minimum 2, maximum unclear. The woman nods once, the kind of nod that ends a question rather than starts one. We'll need eyes on it before we commit, she says. Confirm before we breach. Agreed, Sloane says. Bannister, who's been sitting through all of this in a kind of stunned silence, finally speaks. I want to come. Every head in the room turns toward him. No, Sloane says, immediately, flatly. They're my family. Which is exactly why you don't come, she says. You're compromised. Emotionally. That's not an insult, Lieutenant. It's math. Compromised people make mistakes, and mistakes in a hostage situation get people killed, your family included. Bannister's jaw tightens, but he doesn't argue further. Because some part of him, buried under 6 weeks of terror, already knows she's right. Then what do I do, he says. Just sit here? You drive, she says. When we bring them out, you're the one behind the wheel. You get them to safety. That's your job today. It's not small. It's just not the part you want it to be. He nods slowly. Swallows something that looks a lot like shame and a lot like gratitude, tangled together in a way that doesn't separate easily. Thorn, still pale, still processing a betrayal, 15 years in the making, finally speaks. What do you need from me? I need you visible, Sloane says. Surrounded by people, cameras, if you can manage it. Castellan's network won't move against you while there's a crowd watching. Every minute you're publicly accounted for is a minute they can't act. And if they try anyway, then they'll have already shown their hand, and that's a mistake they can't take back. Thorn nods, some of the color returning to his face, replaced now by something more useful. Purpose. I can do that. Sloane looks around the room one more time. At Priest, steady despite the night he clearly hasn't slept. At Doyle, 20 years retired and somehow exactly where he needs to be. At Bannister, shattered and rebuilding in real time. At Thorn, carrying a betrayal that's going to take a long time to fully sit with. 38 minutes, she says, checking the clock. We move now. The drive to the industrial district takes 11 minutes. Feels longer. Sloane sits in the passenger seat of an unmarked vehicle, the gray-eyed operator driving, two more in a second car trailing at a careful distance. Bannister follows in his own vehicle, 3 cars back, engine running the whole time, even at stoplights. Like stillness itself has become unbearable. The warehouse comes into view at the edge of a mostly abandoned industrial stretch. Chain-link fence, faded signage, the particular kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. Just empty, the stillness of a place built for one purpose, and slowly forgotten by everyone, except the people still using it for exactly that purpose. They park 3 blocks out. Sloane checks her watch, 31 minutes. The gray-eyed operator hands her an earpiece. "Comms open," she says. "We move on your mark." Sloane fits the earpiece, breathes once, 4 counts, and something in her posture shifts. Not dramatically. Just a quiet settling, muscle memory older than this mission, older than this base, older than the 3 years she spent being told she was supposed to be dead. Because this is the part she knows. This is the part that doesn't require words or trust or hoping people believe her. This just requires being exactly what she's always been. They approach on foot, staying low along the fence line. 2 guards visible at the front entrance, casual, weapons slung, the posture of men who've been doing this long enough to have stopped expecting trouble. Complacency, the most predictable weakness of any operation running too long without consequence. Sloane signals. 2 fingers, east side. The gray-eyed operator nods, peels off silently with one of the others toward the second entry point. 26 minutes. She moves along the perimeter alone, the way she's moved along 100 perimeters before, in places that don't appear on any map, under skies that don't belong to this country. Except this time it's Nevada. This time it's a warehouse 3 miles from a base she was humiliated on 24 hours ago. Funny, some detached part of her thinks. How the geography changes. How the job never does. She reaches the eastern edge, presses against cold corrugated metal, and waits for the signal. It comes as a soft click in her earpiece. In position. She moves. 2 suppressed shots from the front, non-lethal rounds, finding their marks with the kind of precision that comes from thousands of hours. Nobody outside a very small circle will ever know about. Both guards drop before either fully registers what's happening. 22 minutes. The element converges at the side door. Sloane doesn't breach loudly, doesn't kick anything down, picks the lock with steady hands. Because silence is a weapon too, and sometimes the loudest thing you can do is make no sound at all. The door swings open. Inside, dim light, the smell of motor oil and dust. 3 men seated around a folding table playing cards. Weapons within reach but not in hand. They don't get the chance to reach for them. The element moves like water, fast, overwhelming. Within 15 seconds, all 3 are on the ground, restrained, disarmed, the whole thing unfolding with the strange quiet efficiency of something that looks almost gentle from a distance, and is anything but. And in the corner, bound but unharmed, sitting close together, the way people do when they've spent hours holding on to each other, because it's the only thing left to hold on to. Sarah Bannister, and beside her, an older woman, gray-haired, frightened but steady, Colt's mother. Sarah's eyes go wide when she sees Sloane crossing the room toward them, weapon lowered now, expression softening into something almost human again after minutes of pure clinical focus. "Are you?" she starts, voice cracking. "I'm here to bring you home," Sloane says, kneeling to cut the restraints. "That's all that matters right now." "Colt," Sarah says, the name breaking apart in her mouth. Is he safe? He's outside," Sloane says, waiting. "He's the one who's going to drive you home." Sarah's composure finally breaks, tears coming fast now. The dam that held through hours of captivity, finally giving way in the safety of rescue instead of the danger of capture. Colt's mother, quiet through all of it, reaches out and grips Sloane's hand with surprising strength for someone who spent hours restrained on a concrete floor. "Thank you," she says. Just that. 2 words carrying the weight of everything else she doesn't have language for yet. Sloane helps them both to their feet. 19 minutes. She guides them toward the door, toward daylight, toward Colt standing at the fence line, with his hands pressed to his face, because he can already see them, even from this distance, even through tears. He's not bothering to hide anymore. But Sloane isn't finished yet, because there's a back office in this warehouse. A door she noticed on the way in, closed, slightly out of place among the open industrial space. She signals the gray-eyed operator. "Get them to the vehicles," she says. "I've got one more thing to check." The operator nods without question, already moving Sarah and Colt's mother toward the exit. Sloane crosses to the back office, weapon ready, not because she expects more guards, because 17 years of training doesn't let her walk into an unknown room any other way. She kicks the door open. Inside, a desk, a chair, a laptop open and running, and a woman sitting behind it, calm, composed, hands folded like she's been waiting. 50-something. Gray hair pulled back tight, uniform bearing the insignia of a full colonel. Colonel Irene Castellan, deputy commander of Fort Ashworth, trusted, respected, the architect of everything. Castellan looks up, and there's no fear in her face, just a kind of tired, resigned calm, the expression of someone who's been running for a long time and has finally quietly stopped. "Captain Kestrel," she says, her voice steady, almost warm, in a way that makes the moment stranger, not easier. "I wondered when you'd figure it out." Sloane's weapon stays level. "Stand up, hands where I can see them." Castellan stands slowly, unhurried, like the gun pointed at her is a formality she's already accepted the outcome of. "You know this doesn't end anything," she says. "I'm one piece. The network's bigger than you understand." "Maybe," Sloane says. "But you're the piece that took my father from me." Something flickers across Castellan's face at that. The first real crack in the composure. "You knew him," Sloane says. "You sat with Thorne at the funeral. You told him to stop looking." Castellan's jaw tightens, but she doesn't deny it. "Your father was going to burn down something bigger than either of you understood," she says quietly. "I did what I thought needed doing. You murdered him." "I made a decision," Castellan says, and for a moment there's something almost pleading underneath the coldness. "Decisions like that don't come with clean hands, Captain. You, of all people, should understand that." Sloane's voice goes very quiet, very still. "Don't," she says. "Don't you dare compare what I've done to what you did. Everything I've carried, every name on my arm, I earned in service to something bigger than myself. You did this for money." Castellan doesn't answer that, because there isn't an answer that makes it sound better. "On your knees," Sloane says, "hands behind your head." For a moment, Castellan doesn't move, some final flicker of resistance, or dignity, or simple disbelief that it's actually come to this, after 28 years, after all the careful maneuvering. Then slowly, she kneels. The gray-eyed operator appears in the doorway a moment later, restraints already in hand, and Sloane steps back, lets the professionals finish what needs finishing. Her own hands finally starting to shake, now that the immediate danger has passed, because that's how it always works. The body holds steady through the crisis, and falls apart only after, when it's safe enough to. She steps outside into full daylight, 14 minutes to spare. Colt is holding his wife and his mother both at once, arms wrapped around them, like he's trying to physically absorb the last 6 weeks of terror out of their bodies through sheer proximity. Sarah's face is buried in his shoulder. His mother has one hand pressed flat against his back, steady, grounding, the way mothers do, even when they're the ones who needed steadying moments ago. Sloane watches from a distance for a moment, doesn't intrude on it, because some moments belong entirely to the people living them, and the best thing she can offer is space. Doyle appears beside her, quiet, watching the same scene. "You did good, Captain," he says. She doesn't answer right away, just watches the family in front of her, whole again, safe again, and feels something complicated settle in her chest, relief, and underneath it, something raw, because she got this family back, but nobody ever got hers back. 15 years, and the person responsible was sitting in an office, not 80 feet away, calm as anything, like grief was a math problem she'd already solved a long time ago. "You all right?" Doyle asks, watching her face carefully. She breathes, 4 counts in. "I will be," she says. And for the first time since this began, she almost believes it, because somewhere behind her, in handcuffs now, is the answer to a question that's haunted her for half her life. And somewhere ahead of her, waiting, is whatever comes after that answer. Whatever justice actually looks like, once you finally get close enough to touch it. Sirens begin in the distance. Military police, responding to Priest's call the moment the element confirmed extraction. Vehicles arriving in a slow, controlled convoy. The kind of response that comes when someone very senior has authorized exactly this kind of intervention, without asking too many questions about how. Thorne arrives with them, stepping out of the lead vehicle, and for a moment he just stands there, taking in the scene. The Bannister family intact, the warehouse secured, and Castellan being led out in restraints between 2 operators, refusing to meet his eyes. Thorne's face doesn't hold anger exactly. Something quieter, grief wearing the shape of betrayal. "Irene," he says, just her name, and it comes out cracked, in a way that 50 years of military bearing couldn't quite prevent. Castellan finally looks up at him. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she says, and for just a moment, there's something real underneath the composure, something that almost sounds like the truth. "I never wanted it to go this far." "But it did," Thorne says. "It went exactly this far, and you let it." She doesn't answer that, because there's nothing left to say that would make any of it smaller than it is. The operators load her into a secure vehicle. The door closes, and just like that, 28 years of trusted service folds into a single, quiet, catastrophic ending. Sloane watches it happen from a few yards away, arms crossed, jaw tight, because this is what justice looks like sometimes. Not loud, not cinematic, just a woman in handcuffs, disappearing into the back of a vehicle, while somewhere behind her, an entire network she was part of keeps operating without her. One piece removed, many more still hidden. Doyle steps up beside her again, following her gaze. "This isn't over, is it?" he says. "Not really." Sloane shakes her head slowly. "No," she says. "This was never going to be over in one morning." Castellan's just the piece that was closest to the surface. There's more underneath. There's always more underneath. "So what now?" "Now," she says, watching the convoy begin to pull away, "we make sure she talks, and we find out exactly how deep this goes." The desert sun climbs higher, burning off the last of the morning's cool edge, and somewhere in the distance, the Bannister family climbs into their car together, whole, shaken, but together, and begins the drive home. Sloane watches them go, feels something settle in her chest that isn't quite peace, but is adjacent to it. A down payment on peace, maybe. Something owed still, but partially paid, because she saved a family today. But somewhere behind her, still waiting, is the rest of the debt 15 years in the making. And she's not finished collecting it yet. Fort Ashworth Base Command, 1,400 hours. The room is windowless. Fluorescent light humming overhead in that particular frequency that makes everyone inside it look a little more tired than they are. Which, today, isn't saying much, because everyone in this building is exhausted down to the bone. Colonel Irene Castellan sits at a steel table, hands folded in front of her, wrists no longer restrained, now that she's inside a secure interview room with 2 armed guards at the door. She hasn't asked for a lawyer yet. Hasn't asked for anything. Just sits there with the composure of a woman who spent 28 years learning how to hold a room, even a room, that's about to end her. Sloane stands on the other side of the one-way glass, arms crossed, watching, because this is the part that isn't glamorous. The part nobody puts in the stories, not the rescue, not the tattoo reveal, just a woman in a small room, deciding how much of the truth she's willing to give up before it's taken from her anyway. Colonel Reyes Olden arrives 40 minutes later, flown in from wherever G2 keeps people like him on standby, the kind of man who travels light and talks less. He studies the file Priest compiled, the financial records, the gate logs, the photograph of the sedan. "Thorough," he says, closing the folder. "Fast, too. You did this in under 3 hours." We didn't have longer than that, Sloane says. He looks at her for a long moment, something calculating behind his eyes and something else too. Respect, maybe, though he'd never call it that out loud. They told me you were good, he says. Nobody mentioned you were reckless. I'm not reckless, sir. I'm efficient. Those aren't the same thing. He almost smiles. Almost. Let's see if the colonel agrees, he says, and pushes through the door into the interview room. Sloane watches through the glass, because she asked to be here for this. Not to conduct the interrogation. That's not her job anymore. Hasn't been for 3 years, not officially. But to witness it, to finally, after 15 years, be in the room, even one room removed, when someone starts telling the truth about her father. Reyes Alden sits across from Castellan. Doesn't raise his voice, doesn't need to. Colonel, he says, you understand your position. I understand it perfectly, Castellan replies. 28 years of service, ending in a room like this. I understood the math the moment that door closed on the vehicle. Then, let's not waste time, he says. We have the financial trail. We have the gate logs. We have testimony from Lieutenant Bannister about the threats made against his family. What we don't have is the full structure. Names above you, names beside you. Castellan is quiet for a long moment. You want me to hand over the whole network, she says. In exchange for what? In exchange for the version of the next 30 years that doesn't end with you dying in a federal facility with no visitors. Reyes Alden says, that's the offer. It's not generous. It's just true. Castellan's eyes drift toward the one-way glass. And for a moment, it's like she's looking directly at Sloane, even though she can't possibly see through it. Tell her something first, she says. Tell who what? The daughter, Castellan says. Cross's daughter. Tell her she can come in herself. I'll talk to Reyes Alden about the network, but there's something I owe her directly, and I'd rather say it once. Sloane's chest tightens, because 15 years of imagining this moment never once prepared her for the reality of it, never once let her practice what it would feel like to stand 3 feet from the person who ended her father's life, and hear that person ask, calmly, politely, to speak with her. She pushes through the door before she can talk herself out of it. Castellan looks up. Something shifts in her face. Not quite remorse. Something more complicated than that. Recognition, maybe, of a debt finally coming due. You have his eyes, Castellan says quietly. I noticed it yesterday on the range. I told myself it couldn't be. And then it was. Sloane doesn't sit. Stands at the edge of the table, arms crossed, every muscle in her body holding still through sheer force of will. You don't get to talk about my father's eyes, she says. Castellan nods slowly, accepting the correction without argument. Fair, she says. Then let me say the only thing that matters. Your father found something real. Something that would have taken down people far above me. I was young then, ambitious. Someone approached me with a choice. Help make the problem disappear, or become the next problem myself. She looks down at her folded hands. I chose wrong, she says. I've had 15 years to live with that choice, and I want you to know it never once felt like winning, not one single day. Sloane's voice comes out low, controlled barely. He had a family, she says. He had people who loved him. He had years he was supposed to get that you took, because it was easier than being brave. Castellan doesn't flinch from that, doesn't argue it. You're right, she says simply. The silence after that admission stretches long enough that Reyes Alden shifts in his seat, the sound of fabric against metal, the only thing breaking it. Sloane finally speaks again, and her voice has gone somewhere quieter. Somewhere that sounds less like an accusation, and more like a question she's been carrying for half her life. Did he suffer? She asks. That night? Castellan's composure cracks for the first time, something raw showing through the careful mask she's held all day. No, she says. It was fast. I made sure of that much at least. It's not forgiveness. I know it's not. But it's true, and I thought you deserved to know it. Sloane closes her eyes for a moment. Breathes, 4 counts in. Because 15 years of imagining the worst version of that night just got replaced by something smaller, something almost mercifully specific. Fast, not suffering. A fact she didn't know she needed until she had it. Thank you, she says finally, for that much at least. Castellan looks up at her, something like gratitude flickering across her face. The strange gratitude of someone finally allowed to put down a weight she's carried, alone, for a decade and a half. Now tell Colonel Reyes Olden everything, Sloane says, stepping back from the table. Every name, every account, every operation. Because that's the only thing left that actually changes anything now. Castellan nods, and she does. The confession takes 4 hours. Sloane doesn't stay for all of it. Doesn't need to. What she needed was the one conversation that was hers. And now that it's happened, the rest belongs to people whose job is turning testimony into prosecutions. She steps outside into the late afternoon light, and for the first time in longer than she can remember, her hands aren't shaking. Priest finds her near the parking area, leaning against a low wall, watching the sun start its long slide toward the horizon. You all right, Captain? He asks. I will be, she says. Same answer as this morning. Except this time it feels truer. He nods, doesn't push further, just stands beside her for a while. Two people who've both had their assumptions about the world quietly demolished and rebuilt in the space of 24 hours. Never thought I'd see anything like this on my range, he says eventually. 15 years running this place. Thought I'd seen it all. Nobody's seen it all, Sloane says. That's the thing nobody tells you. There's always something bigger underneath. He almost laughs, though there isn't much humor in it. Comforting, he says. It's not supposed to be comforting, she says. It's supposed to be true. Admiral Thorne finds her an hour later, in the small courtyard outside the administrative building, sitting alone on a bench beneath a struggling desert tree that somehow survived years of heat it was never designed for. He sits down beside her without asking. The silence between them stretches, comfortable in the way silence only gets between people who've both spent time in rooms with too much noise and learned to appreciate the absence of it. I keep thinking about the funeral, he says finally. 20 years of friendship with your father, and I stood there giving a eulogy for a lie. I didn't know it was a lie, but I stood there anyway. And she sat 2 rows back, watching me do it. Sloane doesn't answer right away. You couldn't have known, she says eventually. Maybe not, he says. But I could have kept asking questions. Instead, I let someone I trusted tell me to stop. And I stopped, because stopping was easier than not stopping. That's on me. No amount of not knowing changes that. She looks over at him, really looks, sees, for the first time, not an admiral, not a rank, not the man who mocked her on a firing line yesterday afternoon, but just a person carrying grief that's been rerouted through 15 years of misplaced trust. He believed in you, she says quietly. My father, he talked about you before. Thorne's throat works. He did, she continues. He said you were the only one in that building who still asked hard questions instead of easy ones. He said that mattered more than rank. Thorne's eyes go bright, and he looks away, out across the courtyard, giving himself a moment before he trusts his voice again. He told me something the night before, Thorne says finally. I never told anyone this. He said, if anything happens to me, make sure somebody tells Sloane she doesn't have to carry this. Tell her she's allowed to just be my daughter. That's enough. That was always enough. Something in Sloane's chest gives way, not loudly. Just a quiet structural shift, the kind that happens after 15 years of building something rigid enough to survive. And finally, being allowed to let a little of it soften. She doesn't cry, not fully, but her eyes go wet, and she doesn't fight it this time. Doesn't perform the stillness she spent years perfecting. Why didn't you tell me that yesterday? She asks. Or this morning? Any point before now? Because yesterday you were a ghost on my firing range, Thorne says. And today you're the woman who saved a family and helped bring down someone I trusted more than almost anyone alive. I needed you to be real first, before I could give you something that fragile. She nods slowly, understanding that somehow more than she expected to. Thank you, she says, for carrying that for 15 years. I wish I'd carried it better, he says. I wish I'd said it sooner to someone, anyone. Instead, I let it sit, the way I let everything sit, because sitting felt safer than moving. Sloane looks at the sky, the color starting to shift toward evening, gold bleeding slowly into rose. We both did that, she says, in our own ways. Maybe today's the day that stops. Bannister finds her last, just before sunset, standing near the edge of the range, where all of this started less than 24 hours ago. Lane 7 sits quiet in the fading light, sandbags still holding the faint impression of a rifle that isn't there anymore. He approaches slowly, hesitant in a way that doesn't match the confidence he walked in with yesterday afternoon. "Captain," he says. "Lieutenant." He stops a few feet away, doesn't come closer, like he hasn't earned the right to yet. "I don't know how to start this," he admits. "Start with whatever's true," she says. "That's usually the easiest place." He nods, takes a breath. "I humiliated you," he says. "In front of everyone. I doubted you. I sabotaged you, without even understanding I was doing it for people who were using my family to make me do it. And the whole time you were protecting all of us. Even me. Especially me, probably, since I'm the one who almost got you disqualified out of pure ego." Sloane doesn't interrupt, lets him say the whole thing. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he continues. "But I'm asking anyway, because you gave me my family back. You gave me a chance to be the kind of officer who does the right thing when it actually costs something, instead of just talking about it in a briefing room." He drops to one knee in the dust, right there, on the edge of the range, an act of formal contrition that feels almost old-fashioned in this moment and entirely earned. "Stand up, Lieutenant," she says. "I don't deserve to just stand up," she says again, firmer this time, but not unkind. He does. Shakily. "You were put in an impossible position," she says. "Someone threatened everything you loved and told you the only way to protect it was to hurt someone else. That's not a fair choice. Nobody makes good decisions under that kind of pressure every single time. But you told the truth when it mattered," she continues, cutting him off gently. "That's what I actually care about. Not the mistake, the moment you chose to stop making it." His eyes go wet, and he doesn't bother hiding it, not after everything today. "Your family's safe," she says. "That's what matters now. Go be with them." He nods, wipes his face with the back of his hand, some of the tension finally draining out of his shoulders after 6 weeks of carrying it alone. "Thank you," he says, "for everything. I mean it." He turns to go, then stops, turns back. "For what it's worth," he says, "I was wrong about you from the start. You're not what I thought you were." "I know," she says, and for the first time in 24 hours, something almost like a smile touches the corner of her mouth. That was kind of the point. He laughs, small and surprised, the first real laugh either of them has managed since yesterday, and walks off toward the parking lot, toward his car, toward the family waiting for him at home. Sloane watches him go, then turns back to Lane 7. Standing alone in the fading light where all of this started, 3 weeks later. The hearing room is smaller than Sloane expected. Wood paneling, a long table, a handful of officials seated behind it, reviewing files that took a team of investigators 3 weeks to assemble from the wreckage of Castellan's confession, because that confession opened doors nobody expected. Meridian Defense Solutions unraveling into a web of shell companies, dummy contracts, payments routed through 6 different states to obscure their origin. 4 additional officers implicated across 2 other installations. A civilian contractor network stretching back over a decade, quietly profiting off compromised defense procurement, while good people paid the price for looking the other way. Sloane sits at a small table facing the panel, in dress uniform for the first time in 3 years, insignia restored. Name tag reading Kestrel in clean block letters that feel strange after so long without one. "Captain Kestrel," the panel chair says, "thank you for your testimony today. Your actions, both in the field over the past several years and in the events of the past 3 weeks, have been reviewed extensively." Sloane nods once, waits. "The department has reached a decision regarding your status," the chair continues. "Your prior classification as deceased is being formally rescinded. Your service record will be restored in full, including recognition for operations previously kept classified." A pause. "We are also recommending you for the Distinguished Service Cross, in recognition of your actions preventing an assassination attempt against Admiral Thorne, and for the successful rescue operation of civilian hostages under extreme time constraints. Sloane's jaw tightens slightly, not from surprise. From something closer to old instinct, the reflex of someone who spent years being told recognition equals exposure equals danger. "Sir," she says, respectfully, "I'd ask that any medal be declined on my behalf or redirected. There are people still serving who need that recognition more than I do. People whose work will never come with a hearing room like this one." The chair studies her for a moment. "That's your right to request," he says, "but the department also wants to be clear about something. Captain, this isn't just about honoring what you did. It's about correcting a record that should never have listed you as anything other than what you are, alive, serving a captain in the United States military." He slides a folder across the table. "We're recommending promotion to major, effective immediately, in recognition of 16 years of distinguished service," he says. "That part isn't optional, and frankly, it's overdue." Sloane looks down at the folder, at the gold oak leaf insignia resting inside it. Something in her chest, some old tightly wound thing, loosens just slightly. "Thank you, sir," she says quietly. "I accept." Outside the hearing room, Thorne is waiting. He's changed in 3 weeks. Not dramatically, but the exhaustion that settled into his face the day Castellan was arrested has eased, replaced by something steadier. He testified himself 2 weeks ago, 6 hours in front of a closed congressional session, laying out everything the investigation uncovered about procurement fraud, stretching back over a decade. "Major now," he says, seeing the insignia in her hand. "Suits you, sir." He studies her for a moment. "I'm retiring," he says, "end of next month. 38 years is enough. I want to spend whatever time I have left doing something that doesn't require a uniform." "I'm sorry to hear that, sir," she says, and means it. "Don't be," he says. "I've got one more thing to do first. I'm establishing a scholarship. Full tuition, 4 years, for a student pursuing military intelligence or investigative work, naming it after your father." Sloane's breath catches slightly. "The David Cross Fellowship," he continues, "because he believed the system could still work, even when it failed him personally. I want to make sure at least one more person gets to carry that belief forward." She doesn't trust her voice for a moment, just nods, throat tight. "That's," she starts, stops, tries again. "That's a good way to remember him." "It's the least I can do," Thorne says, "after everything. After 15 years of silence, I should have broken a long time ago." He extends his hand. She takes it. The handshake lasts a beat longer than formality requires. Both of them understanding, without needing to say it, that something has closed between them today. Not perfectly, not without scar tissue, but closed enough to move forward from 6 weeks later. The house sits at the edge of a quiet residential street outside Richmond, Virginia. Modest. White siding, dark green shutters, a porch that's seen better decades but still holds together fine. Sloane stands at the end of the front walk for a long moment before she moves, because this is harder than the range. Harder than the warehouse, harder than the hearing room. This is the conversation she's been avoiding for 3 years, the one that doesn't come with a mission briefing or a tactical plan. She walks up the steps, knocks. The door opens, and a woman in her late 50s stands there, gray threading through hair that used to be the same color as Sloane's, eyes that widen slowly, then completely, recognition arriving in stages too large for a single moment to hold. For a long time, neither of them says anything. Mom Sloane finally manages, and the word comes out smaller than she intended, cracked at the edges in a way 16 years of training never prepared her for. Her mother's hand comes up to her mouth. Her knees seem to buckle slightly, and she catches herself on the doorframe. "They told me," she starts, voice shaking. "They told me you were." "I know," Sloane says. "I know what they told you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry it took this long." Her mother crosses the distance between them in 3 steps and pulls her into an embrace that carries 3 years of grief in it, and, beneath that, 15 years of a different grief, the one that started the night a car exploded outside this very house, and never fully stopped since. They stand there on the porch for a long time, neither one willing to be the first to let go. "I thought I buried you," her mother whispers into her shoulder. "I stood at a memorial with no body in it, and I told myself that was enough, because it had to be enough, because there was nothing else I could do. I'm here now, Sloane says. I'm not going anywhere again. Promise me, her mother says, pulling back just enough to look at her face. Promise me you're done with all of it. The missions, the danger. I can't do this again, Sloane. I can't bury you twice, even symbolically. I don't have it in me. Sloane looks at her mother's face, worn by grief that spans nearly 2 decades now, and something settles in her chest, a decision that's been building for weeks, finally arriving at its conclusion. I'm done, she says. I already signed the paperwork. I'm out. Her mother's face crumples, relief and disbelief tangled together. You mean it? I mean it, Sloane says. I found what I was looking for. The people responsible for Dad. They're facing justice now. Real justice. The kind that actually holds. There's nothing left that I need to chase anymore. Her mother pulls her back into the embrace, tighter this time. Then come inside, she says. Please, just come inside. Sit down. Let me look at you for longer than 1 minute without falling apart. Sloane laughs, small and wet, and follows her mother through the front door, into a house that still smells faintly the way it did 16 years ago, before everything changed, before the world took her father, and then very nearly took her too. They sit at the kitchen table for hours, talking, not talking, just being in the same room, something both of them stopped believing they'd ever get to do again. 3 months later, a small house sits on a quiet stretch of land outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Adobe walls the color of sunset, a porch facing west toward mountains that turn purple in the evening light. Sloane sits on the top step, coffee in hand, watching the sun begin its long descent. She's not Vantage anymore. Hasn't been officially for months now. The paperwork went through clean. Honorable discharge. Major retired. A pension that covers more than she needs. And a life that, for the first time in 16 years, belongs entirely to her. No missions, no call signs, no lists of names checked off in blood and silence, just mornings. Coffee, a porch. Mountains that don't need protecting from anyone. Doyle visits sometimes, drives up from wherever he's settled, brings terrible coffee and worse jokes, the kind of company that doesn't require performing anything. Priest calls occasionally too, still running the range at Fort Ashworth, still telling stories about the day a mystery shooter walked in and changed everything about how he saw the job he'd been doing for 15 years. Bannister sends a photo every few months, his kids at a birthday party, his wife laughing at something off camera, a life rebuilt, brick by careful brick, out of 6 weeks that nearly destroyed it, and her mother visits every other month, staying a week at a time, the two of them slowly relearning how to exist in the same space without 16 years of silence standing between them. Sloane sets her coffee down and looks out at the mountains, the light shifting slowly from gold to rose to the deep blue that comes right before full dark. She thinks about her father sometimes, still, not with the sharp, immediate grief of the early years. Something softer now, something closer to gratitude than pain. He wanted her to just be his daughter. It took 16 years, a burned identity, 8 months in captivity, and 1 desert firing range to finally get there. But she's there now. Just Sloane. Just a woman on a porch, watching the sun go down over mountains that ask nothing of her. The debt she carried for 16 years is paid. Not because the pain disappeared. Grief doesn't work that way, and she stopped expecting it to, but because the truth finally came out into the light, because the guilty finally answered for what they'd taken, because a family was saved instead of destroyed, because an admiral learned the cost of silence and chose, finally, to break it, because somewhere out there, a scholarship carries her father's name into a future he never got to see, because somewhere out there, a lieutenant who once mocked her rebuilt his life on the foundation of a second chance he almost didn't get. Because somewhere out there, justice, real justice, patient and complete, finally closed a circle that started the night. A car exploded outside a house in Virginia, and a 13-year-old girl decided, without fully understanding what it would cost her, that some debts can only be settled one way. The last light fades behind the mountains. Sloane picks up her coffee, cold now, and doesn't mind. Because for the first time in 16 years, there's nowhere else she needs to be and nothing else she needs to become. Just this, just here, just home.